Hi, and welcome to the Route to CISO Podcast. It's me, Chris Rides. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be chatting to seasoned Chief Information Security Officers about their career journeys. We're going to be unencrypting their real-life stories and searching for the hidden keys to help you fast-track your cybersecurity career. Really excited today to have somebody I've known for a long old time now, Kim Jones, multi-time CISO, and a real big part of the community. Welcome, Kim, and thank you for giving up your time for this.
Hey, Chris, thank you for having me.
So good to see you again. It's been a little while, actually, I think. I can't remember the last time I saw you. I don't, InfoSec World, maybe?
About 3 years ago at the CISO Forum 2022, before InfoSec World in Orlando, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
I was there for the Cybersecurity conference, October, just before the hurricane hit.
That's right. Was that 3 years ago? Oh, my goodness.
I want to say late 2022, if memory serves.
I feel like I only saw you recently.
Nope. It's, that pre and post COVID time,
Yeah, I hear you. I guess it's one of those things when you're sort of on LinkedIn and you sort of every now and then you drop a message or you feel like you're still seen somebody recently. We'll have to get together soon anyway.
I hope so. I will be at InfoSec World next year, and I'll also be at RSA.
Okay, good stuff. Me too. Plans for both. So
excellent.
Fingers crossed I'll be speaking, but I will be there regardless.
Fantastic.
Well, look, thanks again for joining us. The way we often start with this really is to get an idea of a bit of your foundation. So before you even got into cybersecurity, what were you doing first? What was your first job? And yeah, tell me everything, please.
Well, wow. So if you want to be literal, my first job as a teenager was I was a librarian. Yeah, I was looking for an after-school job just to make a little pocket money. Mm-hmm. So I went to work for the town library and worked there throughout my high school years, so working in Beverly, Massachusetts as a librarian there. And, it was literally something I could do after school. I used to ride my bike from, school in the next town, go there, work for a few hours, and then my parents would come pick me up. And between doing my duties, I would get some homework done. And it's always a place where I had another paper or essay to write, or I could grab a reference fairly quickly because I happened to be sitting there. So that was my first gig.
That's we're going to end up with a catchphrase. It's going to be from librarian to CISO or something,
You too can do this.
I went to I tell you, when I think about my first job, now you started talking about it, I don't think I would have such a catchy. I'm so typically English. My first job was in a pub.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think probably, 14, 15. And I used to just restock all of the beers. So I used to put all the bottles back. So there you go. I don't know what my catchphrase
beers,
would be.
books, tomato, it's all good.
Yeah. So obviously librarian, like first job out. But then what was your first sort of career, I guess, your first start of any career?
My first career is I was a soldier. So I went to college at the United States Military Academy at West Point. Mm-hmm. So wow. I took a major there. So there's a bit of a story there, if you allow me to.
Yes, please.
Deviate a little bit. So that story actually kind of starts with my dad. So I'm going to go back a little bit. My dad, who has since passed, was a career non-commissioned officer in NCO. Graduated, left the Army rather as a sergeant major. My dad came up and joined the Army as a method of survival and advancement when he got out of college. He found himself as a prisoner of war in Korea during the Korea conflict for 3 years. Did 2 tours in Vietnam before he retired. Has 2 Purple Hearts and won the Distinguished Service Cross, which is our nation's second highest military honor. Wow. The next one would have been the Medal of Honor. Given that, the last thing that my father wanted anybody to do was to join the Army or any of the armed forces.
Right.
He had said he had done his time for our family and had done it hard. Mm. So his goal was to give us other options and opportunities where we didn't have to make the same choice that he made for advancement. And, we went to good schools. I went to Catholic schools growing up, went to a private school in high school. My parents worked 2 jobs to do that for myself and my 3 brothers and sisters. Um, but I got to tell you, I was a good student, like math, like sciences. Computers were just coming of age about the time, in high school, about the time I was getting ready to graduate. But I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I left high school. I had gotten accepted into the local schools, and being from Massachusetts, the local schools were Harvard and MIT. I had also, not knowing what I wanted to do, said, I think I might want to be a soldier, because I had heard some of my dad's stories, and it seemed like there was meaning in what he was doing, Chris, and I couldn't think of anything out here that would have the similar meaning. So after calming my mother down, he said, if you're going to be a soldier, you're going to be an officer. If you're going to be an officer, apply to ROTC and apply to West Point. I applied to both. I got the ROTC scholarship, and I also got into the academy. And I said, if I'm going to do this, I might as well go into the academy. Now, I knew I wanted to do the computer science degree, but I was planning to say, yeah, that's because I need to do something eventually. I was planning to stay forever, and I was planning to follow my father's footsteps, or sort of. I was going to go infantry, be an airborne ranger, be a pathfinder, just do it hard. And my junior year, the summer before my junior year, I was home. And my dad sat me down. I remember we were sitting down in the backyard, and he asked me to not do something. And it is the first and last time he ever asked me not to do something. And he asked me not to go combat arms, infantry, armor, field artillery, etc. So I went back to school saying, okay, what the hell am I going to do? And started looking around at Signal, looking around at Engineer, though that was a little too close to the combat arms. Engineers will tell you it is a combat arm, and I wouldn't argue with them. And stumbled into military intelligence and said, okay, this might give me an opportunity to do something that's fun and useful, put my brain to work. Every good field unit has an S2 or an intelligence officer, so let's see what happens. So I left the academy and commissioned into Army intelligence, and then spent 11 years, in the military at tactical and strategic levels doing interesting things. I had planned to stay forever still. I got married 5 years later in 1992. Still married to the girl of my dreams. She puts up with me. This is a good thing. But the strain of my deployments was becoming a strain on family, particularly as my son was born. Mm-hmm. And I got to a pivot point where I said, it's going to be my career or my family. So I said, nope, I am choosing my family, period. Now, I did cheat a little bit and count my time in the military as part of my time in security, because I was doing a lot of echelons above corps, strategic level, and counter intel work. And about that time, when I was commanding a CI unit, I started asking questions like, why are we concerned about things like Coke cans and dead drops, and which do happen when there's this thing called a floppy disk that I can put a safe's worth of information into my cargo pocket and walk away. So I started dusting off my old computer science degree, looking at early networking theory, actually contributed to some of the early Army regulations on automated information systems, as they were called at the time, and started beginning to think about what computing and how we secure the computing and what data and network systems could do, from a national security standpoint versus what we are now calling a cybersecurity standpoint. So I mustered out after a tour in Bosnia in 1998, and I was living in Maryland. I was actually stationed at Fort Meade when I mustered out. And what do you do when you have a computer science degree, a high-level clearance, and you live in the DC Beltway? You become a Beltway bandit consultant.
Yep.
I went to work briefly. For one of the big four consulting firms, and I described that time as what I was not learning what I was not willing to do to make money. Everything that I had felt about the civilian sector, this firm just enmeshed and embedded in me. You're going to abuse your people. You're going to grind them into the ground. Your bosses, who are the partners, are going to do what I affectionately call seagull management. They're going to fly in at the last minute, crap over everything, and run away. And that's what they did. I did that for about 6 months and said, okay, it was an issue. We had been working on a delivery. It was a week before Christmas. The boss, literally a week before, had come in and crapped over everything. So the team I was going home at 2 a.m. I was catching 3 hours of sleep, a shower, coming back at 6 a.m. And we had been doing that for a week, to the point where my wife put my son on the phone because he was in tears and said, "Daddy, why did they send you back to Bosnia?" And that's when I knew it was time to find a new job.
Yeah.
So I immediately threw my resume out, and I got picked up a few weeks later with Computer Sciences Corporation.
Right.
And went to work for CSC in their Common Criteria Testing and Evaluation Lab. And I liken this was the time I began to get my technical chops back, because when you're doing technical evaluations for firewalls and operating systems, etc., you have to dust off those muscles that I hadn't used since college. And since I was doing more counter and human intelligence, I hadn't used in the service as much, and say, okay, let's relearn about technology and update, etc. And I did that for several years. Had fun doing that.
Now, question for you, Kim, was that individual contributor work at that stage, or were you leading people? Because you were officer, you were kind of you come through from an officer position, right? So
it was individual contributor work, and it was ad hoc technical team work. When a device came in for evaluation, 4 or 5 of us got together, we did the evaluation, we broke up, and then we come back and do another evaluation, and I may be doing on one part of the evaluation on this tool, and I'd be doing another part of the evaluation on this tool. So it was the same group of guys, but it was IC work. I was leading 3 people, me, myself, and I. And it was a great experience, just because I credit that time in terms of really beginning to get my technical muscles back, which, as you know, is you need to do if you're going to stay in this profession.
Yeah.
So this was early to the mid portion of the .com era.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the team and folks I've been working with at CSC broke off to form the security component of a young .com company. And they had asked me early on, and I said, yeah, no, you're going to be road warrior again, and I like being married and I like seeing my kid, so I'll stay here. They came at me a year later and said, the problem we're running into is we need people who understand governance. We're building great stuff, but they want policies, they want control frameworks, they want to understand these things. And these guys were great geeks, and they didn't understand the governance piece, and asked me to come in to see if I would help them put together policy structure around and control. So it's like, okay, I'll go do the .com thing. Paid real well, was consulting and running with a lot of companies. And like most people, I've got thousands of shares that are worth toilet paper at the time. But it was a really interesting experience, because as the company began to contract, the security team was truly hunting and killing its own food. We were doing everything from scoping clients to cold calling to writing statements of work to delivering, and we were sustaining and profitable. But 15 guys can't support a 400-person company.
Yeah.
So as that began to fall apart, there was a group that founded its own security firm. Another group went into another company, and about 6 of us went to work for Capgemini Ernst & Young.
Right.
And this was just E&Y had spun out its consulting arm from tax and insurance. Capgemini had bought the consulting arm. The challenge that they ran into is Capgemini had a great security practice in Europe, did not have one here in the US. Mm-hmm. And E&Y had kept the security practice and was charging Capgemini an arm and 2 legs
for
using the practice. So CG and Y said, let's found our practice here. And the six of us became the core of that. And this was about the early days of HIPAA.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually incubated under the healthcare arm, doing a lot of HIPAA consulting. I spent
Right.
some time at Cigna. I spent some time at a few other places as well. And spent some time at Nike, doing various things, doing general security consulting, everything from business continuity, disaster recovery, incident response, governance and compliance, just doing the consulting life for a bit. I had in, hang on. This was 2002. 2002, I had a falling out over a trust issue with the man who was my boss. And you've known me, Chris. I can give on many things. I don't give on trust.
Yeah.
It was to the point I walked off a client site. I said, that's it. I quit. And, again, talk about the girl of your dreams. I called my wife, who had just left her job 3 weeks earlier. So I've now got a mortgage, 2 car payments, a kid in private school, and was one income now down to none, and said, I just quit my job. She said 2 words to me over the phone: come home.
Right.
So got on a plane. By the time I had landed and turned my cell phone on, apparently word had gotten out that I was on the market, and I had about a dozen folks saying, look, we'll make a job for you, talk to this person, etc.
Brilliant.
I had decided at that point, I was living in Maryland. We didn't know where we wanted to live.
Mm-hmm.
I was speaking at a boondoggle event out in Arizona. And now I had grown up literally 5 miles from the ocean in Massachusetts. I came to the desert. I absolutely fell in love.
Right.
And for a couple of years, I had been looking for work in Arizona, and there was just nothing at level. It was, Arizona was a place for data centers, not for people leading programs, not for people building. Wasn't a lot of consulting.
Yeah.
So I had been looking for a few years, and when I got home, I said to my wife, I said, I'm going to take this as a sign. I am going to take any job I can. This was September, October 2022, up until December, January. If I can't find work in Arizona by December, January, I have friends out there. I will go out there, sleep on their couch, and send money home until I can find work. Leslie did not bat an eye. She said, okay. It just wasn't phased. She told me later that at that point, I had been genuinely unemployed for a total of 3 days in the entirety of the lifetime that she had known me.
Right. So she had all the facts and figures that knew she shouldn't be worried. Right?
She's like, yeah, he's going to find work.
Yeah.
He's going to find work. So the next afternoon, I got a call from one of those guys who had, who had left a message on my cell phone and says, I've got an opportunity here. I need some help. It's only 3 months long, but I'll put you on payroll so you will have healthcare benefits. So I was like, okay. I actually turned it down because of the commute, and they hadn't met my price point. They called me back a day later, met my price point, and I took it. That Sunday, the job for the director of security, which was the CISO gig for a $1 billion market cap financial services credit card processor by the name of eFunds, posted on monster.com. I am a monster success story. I applied for the gig.
Yep.
It was a 3-month between hiring and interview process. The man who would be my boss, a gentleman by the name of Clyde Thomas, who's a dear friend of mine, a dear friend of mine now. He was boss and mentor, and now he's just a really, really dear friend. Offered me the job Christmas Eve, 2022.
Nice.
I started on the 27th of January, 2023. So my first in-house non-consulting gig was as the CISO of this company.
For eFunds, brilliant.
Here's what they didn't tell me.
I hear a lot of that. I believe there's a lot of things that aren't told to CISOs until after they get the job, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the director of security and the director of the audit had been the same person prior to me coming on board. So they split the role because they had challenges with that individual. Let that individual go. I got hired as director of security. My buddy Sean Murphy got hired as the head of audit a month later. Um, there were a lot of regulatory challenges. The OCC was looking and not happy. There had been a restatement of the books. Collectively, there were over 430 audit issues that had been open for more than a year. We were being audited about once every month. The security team had not been trusted, and the morale on the team was low. The attitude towards the team was of distrust, and that was the environment I parachuted into. 2 years later, we had cleaned up all of the audit issues at the same audit rate, kept audit issues at zero for the rest of my time there. With letting go just one person, we were polled as one of the most trusted organizations within the company.
Nice.
And I actually spent about a year where I turned security into a profit center, not just a cost center within the environment, which was neat. So
yes,
that was my journey up to becoming CISO, and me taking my first CISO gig at, I was 37 at the time.
So let me ask you, so I want to go back a bit, first of all.
Please feel free to interrupt me, by the way. I just kept going.
No. It's interesting. I love listening to this and hearing all of your stories. So I will absolutely jump in and ask you questions on stuff. What you were working as an individual contributor, and then I know that one of the toughest parts is making that step up to leadership. You obviously had some leadership experience, and I've spoken to Larry Whiteside Jr. and Jamaica Aaron and people like that have also come from the forces and been been leaders in there. So you came in as an individual contributor. When did you then make your step up commercially or within consulting into being a leader?
I'm that odd duck. I literally was an individual contributor, and my first leadership role in the civilian sector was CISO at eFunds.
Wow.
I got hired to, and it's interesting. Most of my CISO work, actually, that's not true. All of my CISO work has been break fix work. You know, my boss Clyde took to calling me a smoke jumping CISO. So I was the guy you called when you fired the first one and the second one ran away kicking and screaming. And that's what I do. And I think it's because, Clyde is a gentle giant of a man. He's an absolute consummate business professional. He's now, I think, doing venture capital private equity work, if I remember correctly. But he also came up in his very young years as a former Marine and was a drill instructor at Quantico. So he and I, in terms of our viewpoints towards people and integrity, and if you'll excuse my language, just getting shit done.
Yep. No.
We bonded on that when we met. So that's what he needed within the role. And that's always been who I am.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the proven past of leading people already, right? So it's not like you've never done it before. And when somebody knows you and knows the way you work, why can't they take that jump and say, right, this is the person we need in?
And the other thing I will say in that regard, because Clyde hadn't known me then, but he understood that military background. The other thing that was helpful to me in making that jump was my consulting time.
Yes.
Because, the military gets stereotyped, I believe unfairly. But stereotypes are always based upon some grain or nugget of truth. And we lead differently than most people lead out here in the civilian sector. And people aren't used to some of those differences. Some of those differences can be very helpful.
What sort of thing? How's it different?
Well, most of for me, how do I put this? It's possible to be direct without being rude.
Right.
It's possible to be directive without being obnoxious. Mm-hmm. And it's possible to tell the truth without being insulting. And one of the things that frustrates me to no end is you know, and it's also possible to give a yes or no answer and to stand on it. Good leaders do that. You know, if I'm wrong, I own it. If I'm right, I give credit elsewhere. But if you want to know what the situation is, I'm going to give you a straight answer, or as straight an answer as I know. And a lot of that for me came from my intelligence work as well, because what my son asked me, and I know I'm rambling.
No,
I
you're not
get
at
too off
all.
track, let me
No,
know.
not at
My
all.
son asked me once what intelligence work was like, and he was young. And I thought a while, and I came up with an analogy, and I said, okay, take a 500-piece puzzle, lay it out on the table face down, so all you see is the gray cardboard. Take the box away. I tell you, it is a picture of a landscape in a particular area. Yeah. Every 5 minutes, you get to turn over 5 pieces. Then I give you 5 minutes to look at the 5 pieces you have. And then at the end of that second 5 minutes, I tell me specifically what this is a picture of. Every time you guess wrong, somebody gets hurt. That's intelligence work in a nutshell. Guessing right with the minimal amount of information so that the fewest number of people that you know get hurt. When you do that for a living, and when you train to do that for a living, and when I have done that for a living in combative situations, it's like, guys, I'm going to give you the best answer I can with the information I have. And if I get it wrong, I will tell you I get it wrong, because guess what? Nobody dies based upon me getting it wrong. What's the worst that's going to happen? I used to tell my guys, I'm going to get fired. I'm in cybersecurity. Somebody's going to pay me to do something. I'm going to get, excuse my language, I'm going to get my ass chewed. I have had my ass chewed by 4-star generals, U.S. senators, and U.S. ambassadors. Ain't nobody can chew ass like a 4-star general. I'm sorry. Okay. So, why can't we have an honest conversation with one another? Be direct regarding the consequences. Make a decision regarding that, and then own the consequences.
Yeah.
I find that mid-level managers are reluctant to do that. And frankly, because their executive so-called leadership avoids doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I have found that to be the case in many of the companies I've dealt with. So the ability for me to come in and say, look, I can tell you the truth in a way that's not insulting, doesn't paint you as a moron, doesn't make you look like an idiot, and isn't rude. But I'm going to tell you the truth. So that piece of it, I like to take from my military experience, my leadership training there, and being in situations where those things matter. I don't see a lot of that here out in the civilian sector. And worse, I don't see it as appreciated as it ought to be. And what I see is very senior leaders, having grown up a certain way, get to a point and say, now how do we fix this? And aren't willing to understand that you're part of the problem. And you've been promoted advocating that problem. And then you don't understand why your culture isn't working.
Yeah,
So,
there's
bit of a go down the tree branch, but those are the pieces that I enjoy about the experience that I had wearing funny green clothes, and that I try and bring to the organizations that I run and that I lead. You tell the truth. No may have to be the first answer, but how has to be the last. And you can engage directly without being rude. Learn those things and you'll go far.
Yeah. No, I mean, come and work in security recruitment and you'll see a lot of that stuff as well. It's really hard. It's almost like when you want to, I consult with companies. We consult with companies that generally have been looking and trying to find their own people for a period of time unsuccessfully. And the first thing we need to do is find out why they're being unsuccessful and where the problems are.
Oh, yes.
And so, we have in those consultative approaches, we talk about all of this stuff, run through what they're actually looking for. Went through 5 years worth of job descriptions we had, and we get the ones that they send to us and we keep those. And then we've got our own job descriptions. We keep all this obviously in a CRM system. And over 90% of them had a major difference between what they sent to us originally and what we ended up actually getting from them. and recruiting for. And of course, that's where the stuff's broken. But
absolutely,
when we try to do it tactfully, but telling somebody, it's like telling somebody their baby's ugly, right? Nobody wants to hear it.
Yeah.
But you can't change anything. Yeah, exactly.
There was a great line that my wife used recently from the movie G.I. Jane with Demi Moore, where she's telling the commandant of the SEAL school, just treat me like everyone else. And he says to her, Lieutenant, you're going to get what you want. I'm not necessarily sure you're going to want what you get. Right. And I copy paste that to the situations that you're laying out.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I agree with you. I think most people will say that they love to have somebody that's straight with them and tells them how things are, and then they know where they stand, all the cliches you hear. But often when that actually happens, that's not how people react, right? And I think we've lost clients, unfortunately, from telling them, where their issues lie and what they needed to do to correct them.
You're better for it.
I think so.
You're better
I hope
for
so.
it.
Because if not, we're working on an impossible job, right? We're not adding any value. We're just another supplier that's just sending them resumes, basically.
Yep.
And to the point where I had one CISO who I've got a lot of respect for, who came to me like a year and a half later and basically said, Chris, like, everything you told me was happening was actually what was going on. They were just covering it up. We couldn't see it, and I apologized that I didn't do something about it at that time, because really it was hidden from me, and clearly, you could see that straight away. So it was nice to have that conversation. We're actually still good friends.
Good.
But sometimes it's the difficult conversations are the ones you got to have. Well, I think that's a great spot to finish part 1 of our interview with Kim Jones. So we're going to be back next Tuesday, for part 2, when we continue our conversation with Kim on his route to CISO. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening to the Route to CISO podcast. If there's something you really want me to ask on the next episode, or if you're a CISO who wants to inspire the next generation, please reach out. I'll leave a URL to my LinkedIn profile, and make sure you connect and message me there. We're always looking for feedback, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.